You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholics, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and a charm, just like Jim. It's more than life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more than life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club, like some bottles, impress them girls. It's more than life.
Fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And who dat? And we are back, just like the Saints, coming off of a mini bye and a much-needed mini bye after the 5-game stretch that they've just had. And like I said, it was much needed, and the stress and just the embarrassment of having to watch the Saints game and listening to commentators talk about how great the team that they're playing against looks and how they weren't able to do these things before they played the Saints in this game. But anyways, there's a lot to get into because we've taken a little bit of been a week since we've seen you last, but we got a lot of main course to get into. So let's get into that. So can I get a menu? And the first thing is obviously first up is the Saints 33-10 loss to the to Sean Payton in the Denver Broncos, which that was Thursday, October 17th, 2024. So that was last Thursday. And man, this was just a tough game to watch, not just because of obviously getting blown out for 2 weeks in a row and getting embarrassed for 3 weeks in a row, but just the fact that it was on national television, you having to listen to them keep up bringing up about how great Sean Payton is and how much he did for the franchise, and talking about how great his team has looked, how they looked so great on the offensive line and the defensive line, and how they hadn't looked that good all year until, of course, they played the Saints, who are like down 50% of their roster and 40% of their starters on just an injury report alone. It was a very hard game to watch and try to just get any enjoyment of it at all. I think into the second half, I basically had to turn the volume like pretty much all the way down because I couldn't listen to Kirk Herbstreit and Al Michaels anymore, just praising about how great the Denver Broncos looked and just how dominant they were and how great of a head coach Sean Payton is because he's turning the Broncos around. And look at Bo Nix, look what he can do with a rookie quarterback. It made me just sick, wanted to puke, and it was just the whole thing was just embarrassing. But let's get into some of these stats and numbers real quick here. So this the first downs. I guess kind of towards the end of the game, the Denver Broncos were just kind of running it every time and just trying to eat up clock. So some of these stats aren't as skewed as you might think compared to some of the other games that the Saints have lost during this 5-game winning streak. So with first downs, the Denver Broncos had 22, but the Saints did actually have 15, but still, it's not enough. But this is probably the biggest number, and I think during this 5-game losing streak, this stretch that they've had, they've almost allowed like almost 1,000 yards rushing during this stretch. But this is the second, or maybe this is the third game. I don't think the Chiefs ran for 200 yards against. I think they only had like 139 yards. But this is the second game in a row that the Saints have allowed a 200-yard rushing by a team because the Denver Broncos had 35 carries for 225 yards and 2 touchdowns. While on the other hand, the Saints couldn't run the ball at all due to just the offensive line. And I think they're slowly working Kendra Miller back into the game plan, but I felt like it probably wouldn't have hurt to give him a couple more carries in this game, but they only had 21 carries for 97 yards and no touchdowns. They didn't have any type of touchdowns till like when there was a little more than a minute left. They brought in Jake Hayner and he threw a garbage time touchdown. But I mean, the I didn't think Bo Nix looked great or anything. He didn't really do anything. He didn't have to with how bad the Saints were in this game, because he was 16 for 26 for 164 yards and no touchdowns, no interceptions, which he should have thrown an interception. He should have thrown possibly a pick six. It literally hit Tyrann Mathieu right in the breadbasket, and he had a good path to run too if he would have caught it. But in retrospect, other than just adding to Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badgers' legacy, I guess it doesn't really matter. It wouldn't have mattered. They still wouldn't have been able to maintain or score any points. But that's about the only thing the Saints have really been good at this year is forcing turnovers. And then, of course, just total Saints quarterback numbers because Jake Haener did come in for a little bit in this game. He was 3 for 4, 38 yards and one touchdown, and so the total was 28 for 39, 210 yards and one touchdown. And then this is like probably on top of like the rushing numbers they had. This is just like a killer for the Saints just in general, just without I guess both sides of the ball, the defensive and the offensive line for the Saints is just not that good, and it drives you crazy because they got a decent amount of money invested in their defensive line, and they're relatively healthy, but you're getting nothing out of them. There were some more almost sacks in this game. The Saints are kings of almost sacks, but they didn't sack Bo Nix once in this game with him scrambling around all crazy on plays, and Saints just couldn't get there. They got in the backfield in his face, and he'd just find a way to get out, or either just to throw something into the ground or pick up some yards rushing out of the pocket. But the Saints couldn't do nothing. While on the other hand, the Saints interior offensive line, which is completely hospitalized and complete trash with the backups they have in there, got allowed 6 sacks for 36 yards lost. And I mean, you got to realize that you got a rookie quarterback and a second year pro in there, and that's a crazy stat. Uh, uh, a crazy stat by Spencer Rattler and Derek Carr. So in the 5 games that Derek Carr played in, he was only sacked 5 times, and then in the 2 games that Spencer Rattler has played in, he's been sacked 11 times. That's a wild number there. Hopefully the Saints after this 10-day, 11-day mini bye, like we all had, thankfully, at least the Saints couldn't lose on early Sunday football and couldn't lose on Sunday or Monday night because thankfully, they didn't play. So maybe the Saints are getting an opportunity to play another team on a short week. I do believe the Chargers played on Monday, so the positions are switched there. So hopefully they can come back a little healthier and take advantage of that. And then total yards, there was not quite as bad as the Chiefs and the Buccaneers, who both almost had like 600 yards against them. Denver Broncos, they only had 389 yards. They only had like 400. Not quite as bad. Is that improvement? I don't think so. I don't think so. Until they fix this running game or learn how to tackle again, I think the losses and the despicable and terrible play on defense is going to continue, and just not winning many games when you are allowing 200 yards rushing. So the Saints, they only had 271. Not a big surprise that they didn't put up any numbers. And then fumbles lost. So that's something we've been screaming about the 7 previous games, is how the Saints can force fumbles, at least force one fumble a game, it seems like, but are never able to fumble it. But they were never able to recover it. But in this game, they were able to actually get on one. That's about the only good thing the Saints have been doing on defense since week 2. Since after week 2, they can they get a lot of interceptions and they force fumbles, but not every time they don't always recover them. But they were able to force one and were able to recover it. But the Saints also had 2. Spencer Rattler was strip sacked and lost 2 as well. So kind of evens out there a little bit, and that's total turnovers for both teams. 1 for Denver and the 2 fumbles for the Saints. Penalty yards, it seems like it's every game kind of. It's kind of odd that you look at these penalty yards for the Saints opponents, and it's almost every game during this 5 game losing streak that their opponent has more penalties, has more penalty yards, but it feels like it's like some of the no calls on their opponents and some of the calls in the third and the fourth quarter that don't get called that end up playing a big part into why the Saints are losing some of these games. But I don't think you could really say that about this game against the Broncos. It didn't feel like the Saints were ever in this game or really ever had a chance. But Denver had 7 sacks, 7 penalties for 47 yards, and the Saints just had 5 for 35. But they just, besides that and the forced fumble, they couldn't do anything else. They really couldn't do anything else. Not couldn't do anything else well in this game. And then third down conversions, and this shows you that Bo Nix isn't. It wasn't good. It wasn't because of Bo Nix. It's just because they couldn't stop the run. They were 4 for 11 on third down. The Broncos was. That's not impressive. But the Saints weren't any better. They were 5 for 17, which was even worse. But that's a little bit of an impressive stat that the Saints were 3 for 4 on fourth down conversion. So I mean, you got to take some positives if you want to try to find any positives for that. They were good at converting fourth downs and weren't heavily penalized. And then the Broncos were never in a situation where they had to go for one, just like last week. They were getting their cheek clapped the entire game, so no need to go for unnecessary fourth down conversions or anything like that. And the time of possession, what was with the score being what it was, 33-10, you would have thought the time of possession and with the amount of yards that the Broncos rushed for, would have thought it would have been a lot more skewed. It was 33-16 to 26-44, so it wasn't a huge margin, not like some of the games where it's been 10, 20 minutes difference in some of these games. So that's just kind of the team stats there. Let's get into some MVPs here. So my MVP pick for this was I just wanted to pick, just like last week. I kind of just wanted to pick a player that we didn't think would matter whether they had a big game or they had a bad game or they got hurt, because that's how it's felt all year with me picking my MVPs. I think I only had my first real MVP win a pick. I think maybe Rashid Shaheed may have won one, but we had Cameron Jordan. We picked Cameron Jordan, who hadn't done like anything all year, and then he had the interception, the lollipop interception that just kind of fell right into his arms that cleared him, certified him for our MVP last week. But we tried to do the same thing this week. Didn't want to pick any player that really is an important player because we're afraid we picked them and then they either have the worst game of the year or they end up getting hurt. But we just picked Mason Tipton, but he didn't really do. He didn't have a big game during this game or anything. He was let's see, Mason Tipton. He was targeted 9 times, but only had 6 catches for 45 yards and a long of 9. You could have. I guess if I would have picked Cedric Wilson Jr., that would have been maybe a better option because he had 7 targets for 6 catches for 57 yards, a touchdown, a long of 17, and that was the touchdown that he got thrown to him by Jake Haener. But really, the one that I'm going to pick in this game, just because I was excited that we finally got to see him, and I thought out of all the running backs. And all just the runners in general, the small amount of yards that they were actually able to get in this game, I thought he looked the best. He looked the most explosive and was averaging about 6 yards a carry. But Kendra Miller, it's glad to have you back. So I'm just going to give it to Kendra Miller, even though you with the touchdowns and the most yards, you could easily give it to Cedric Wilson. But I'm giving it to Kendra Miller, and I hope he can build on that and stay healthy would be nice because Kendra Miller, he had 6 carries for 36 yards and a long of 16, had 3 targets, but only had 2 catches and just 1 yard. He had some losses on some of those thrown just little dump off passes where he lost some yards because only one of them gained any yards for 6 yards there. But yeah, that was nice to see Kendra Miller do that. Nice to see him back. And then on defense, it's hard to really give it to really anyone. I guess we were talking about Willie Gay Jr. earlier. So that was his second game back after his breaking his hand. And he was able to force a fumble and he was able to recover it. So it's pretty easy just to give it to Willie Gay Jr. on that one. And then let's see on special teams. I'd like to just probably just give it give it to Matthew Hayball again because he had 6 punts for 600 and six punts for 262 yards, an average of 4.4 and a half and 52 long. Which I just think Matthew Hayball, he's looked better than Lou Hedley and Blake Gillikin. That's fair enough to say. So I think the Saints may have found their punter, but I actually want to give it to Jermaine Jackson, the returner, he seemed like he was filling in for Rashid Shaheed, who's on IR now. I don't know if I've been on here or reported that Rashid Shaheed, he ended up having to have the knee surgery, and it turns out that they went ahead and went with the full repair on the knee, which I think that's what I wanted him to do. You know, he's going to be out the rest of the season for it, but and long term for a young electric explosive player like that, you don't want to just trim away at the cushion and the shock in their knee. You want to just fully repair it and hope they can come back at least 90% of what they were for the injury. But Jermaine Jackson was filling in for him, and he had four returns for 100 yards, which is a 25 average, had a long of 32, and then had one punt return for 13 yards, which is a long of 13. So I'm giving that to Jermaine Jackson. So that's my special teams, defense, and offensive player. So we have for our MVPs for offense, special team, defense, and special teams, we got Kendra Miller, Willie Gay Jr., and Jermaine Jackson. All right. So now, hot takes. This is a horrible. This turned out to be one of the worst hot takes of the year because it completely backfired and just blew up in our face, blew up in my face at least because I was the one that said it, I guess. But we actually had the gall, had the stones to give a hot take, and this is why they're hot takes. This is why they're white hot takes. They're white hot because they have a good chance of being wrong. But I actually predicted that you wouldn't see any tweets or see during the game that any Saints player would be going into the blue tent. Well, uh, a lot of Saints fans are getting what they asked for. So on looked like a pretty standard play where a Broncos player was getting wrapped up in tackle, and Paulson Adebo just kind of came in late and kind of just fell over the pile a little bit. And at first, it looked like he was grabbing his knee, so I was like, "Oh, great! He's torn his ACL, he's torn his MCL meniscus." You know, oh, talk about worst case scenario. He broke his damn femur. He broke his leg. Like that's a pretty rare and uncommon type of injury to have in the NFL, unless you're Delvin Breaux and dealing with this training staff in Oshner, I guess. But yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of Saints fans and Hoodats out there that probably aren't horribly upset about this because you get what you asked for. You wanted to see more Kool-Aid. Well, you're gonna get him now because Paulson Adebo is done for the season. So that was a really bad hot take because about the worst injury other than maybe brain or a neck or a spine injury. I mean, you're breaking literally the biggest bone in your body in your femur, and they had him have surgery like that night because it was so bad. And I guess there was nerve damage and stuff in there because you see a lot of times these guys will have like a torn knee or a broke hand, and it takes like maybe a week before they actually have surgery. But he had it. He went to like the emergency room and had it done like right then. So be interesting to see now what their decision is on Paulson Adebo coming up, and that's just real sad for him because he is a good player, but just with all the chaos during the season, it's easy to pick on him because he's getting all the defensive holding and pass interference calls that cost them some games. But really, I mean, other than those defensive holdings and some pass interference, he's a solid corner. He's a ball hawk, forces turnovers and things like that. So real bummer for him whether the Saints were going to re-sign him in free agency or not. But I'm definitely sure that's going to hurt the number that he could have attained, even with being kind of a penalty magnet. But that's really a bummer. So our hot take definitely didn't hit, but I guess you got to look kind of on the bright side. I guess we'll get to see what Kool-Aid McKinstry can do. I think he had just like Tyrann Matthews, he had an interception that was kind of thrown right to him and wasn't able to get it. But hopefully they can improve. He can improve on that with more snaps, depending on whether he's playing on the inside or the outside across from Marshawn Lattimore, who also kind of pulled up lame in this game. But I think he was just done with playing and done with getting embarrassed by Sean Payton's Denver Broncos. So that hot take was hot, white hot, and it just flamed out because it was not right. And then now on to picks and scores. We were right with the pick. I definitely thought Sean Payton was going to come in here and clown and just absolutely pants Dennis Allen, and he did. He did. Like really, the most surprising thing about this game is that I'm surprised that Dennis Allen is still employed after this. I was looking for the tweets that he was going to be fired like right after this game or on it's going to be a Black Monday for him, but he's still the head coach. But yeah, so I picked the Broncos to win, but I didn't think they were going to blow the Saints out again. I didn't think the Saints were going to get blown out again. I thought Dennis Allen maybe could have got the defense right and got them to playing a little bit better, but apparently not. But apparently his job isn't in any type of risk or in danger either. But I picked the Broncos to win 23-13. So we were about a little more than 10 points off of what our prediction was. But yeah, so the Saints couldn't even get to 13 points. Pretty sad getting beat 33-10 and just absolutely embarrassed on your home field during Drew Brees' Hall of Fame induction night. Just you think they'd maybe pick a different opponent or a different night, maybe one that they can think that they should guarantee a win against or something. But I guess there's really no guarantees in the NFL. So the pick was right, but the score was off a good bit. So that's all the Broncos stuff that you need to hear about, and I just don't even want to talk about it too much. I mean, that was a week ago, so I'm just completely over that. Time to move on to the Chargers, who got beat by the Arizona Cardinals and don't look like a great team either, and they're coming in off of a short week against the Saints, who are coming off of a mini bye. I mean, it's probably a good get back game for them, for the Chargers, and should be for the Saints, depending on how healthy they can get and if they can learn to tackle again. But let's move on. We'd usually be about done here, but there's a lot of stuff that's kind of happened uh, during other games, and then just some trades and things that have happened, and some signings. So the big signing that probably a lot of people are excited about is that the Saints have re-signed Alvin Kamara. They've re-signed him to a 2-year, $24.5 million extension, which so he'll be with the Saints. He'll be with the Saints through the 2026 season, and has a guaranteed money of 15.5 million on the signing bonus. And so I think he had like one more year that would have gotten him through the 2025 season, but I think it was like a Boyd year where if he actually played under it, it would have been like 23, 24 million. So this pretty much guarantees Alvin Kamara will be with them up until the 2027 season, I guess. And you'd say Alvin Kamara wants to end his career. A lot of fans want him to finish his career here, and I mean that probably sets that up for a very likely possibility. But honestly, if you've been watching, I think I've already mentioned. Definitely after seeing this signing, I feel as if I'm kind of in the minority about this. I'm not upset about it. I love Alvin Kamara. He's one of the best Saints of all time. But this is kind of wash, rinse, repeat with how the Saints have been handing out these big contracts to basically washed or on the verge of coming up to 30 years old, 30 years old plus, and being washed. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it right now, and it's affecting the Saints mostly on defense with Cam Jordan basically doing nothing, Demario Davis not being able to get sideline to sideline, Tyrann Matthews dropping interceptions, not being able to finish games because of nagging injuries. And I mean that's just kind of what this feels like, especially with the kind of the rule of thumb with paying running backs. You don't pay 30-year-old running backs. I guess after this year, 25, 23, he would be like 30, 32, 33 years old. So, I mean, let's just hope he doesn't just completely fall off a cliff like Cameron Jordan and Demario Davis. And I mean, another like a clear reason not to really have given him this contract is just all the injuries he's played with this year. And I understand he's played through them. He's been a trooper. He's kept his mouth closed while wanting and trying to work out a new contract. But I mean, that should be a clear sign of why you wouldn't give an older running back a big contract, an extension like this, because he's been dealing with a hip injury. He's got broken ribs. He's come out today and clarified that he has a broken hand. Like, come on. You think as he gets older and into 2025 and into 2026 that those type of injuries are going to get any better? Probably more than likely what's going to happen, he's going to get some kind of devastating injury like a torn ACL or a really bad ankle sprain or something like that. And then you're probably not even going to have him for the entire 2.5 years. He'll be injured or on IR. So, I love Alvin Kamara. He's all-time skills position touchdown leader. But I would have been perfectly fine with them letting him walk. And, it would have been horrible, I guess, him not retiring as a Saint. But I definitely saw more out of Kendra Miller. Just really the last 2 seasons, the last game against the Atlanta Falcons, and then this game against the Broncos. I think I saw more explosiveness and just more speed out of Kendra Miller. I guess really his only problem, we're talking about possible injuries and current issues, Alvin Kamara is dealing with, but that's basically what's kept us from getting to see more of Kendra Miller. But I would have been fine with moving on. But like some people that are happy about it, or some people that are mad about it. I'm not really mad about it, but I don't see the point in it if you're trying to get away from what the Saints are dealing with right now on defense with Marshall or with Tyrann Matthews and Cam Jordan and Demario Davis. But hey, Alvin Kamara should be a Saint for the rest of his career, his entire NFL career. So he'll finish it. He won it. He said he wants to. So looks like it's going to happen. So that's Alvin Kamara. That's a fun thing. At least we can live in nostalgia, whether he is actually still playing or is any good within the next 2.5 years. But I guess we'll see. The next thing is that NFL wide receiver movement. There's been a lot of movement with trades and signings and injuries. So the Saints have been really down bad the last couple weeks, where Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave both got injured and then didn't play in the game. Got injured against the Bucks and then didn't play in the game against the Broncos. And then there's still question marks about Chris Olave still going through concussion protocol. And we already talked about Rashid Shaheed being done for the season. So we'll see him in 2025. But the Saints, they added a wide receiver, Marquez Valdez Scantling. I guess that's a player that they really had some grades on and had done a lot of work on him, studying on him coming out of the draft, and was a player that they wanted coming out of the draft, and I think wanting him too before he went to the Jets. I think where did MB? No, before he went to the Chiefs, they were kind of in the market for him, but 5-6 years later they're getting him. So I don't think any of the videos and stuff that you studied when he was coming out of college as a rookie really pertains to what kind of player he is now. It'd definitely be easy to say he's washed, but Saints needed some veteran present and in the locker room and over his career. MVS, he's been a deep threat, so maybe he can bring a little bit of what they're losing with Rashid Shaheed, but I don't see him at this point in his career being on his level at all. But you had to do something. Still interested to see if they'll make any trades or the main one. Definitely hearing was kind of hearing a little bit of rumbles after Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave went down as maybe adding Mike Williams. But with Mike Williams and MVS, you'd have a lot of veteran wide receivers on your team that account for a lot of drops. But hey, I think they'd fit right in with the Saints. So that's what the Saints have kind of done with some of the NFL wide receiver movement. But I don't know. This goes to like another team that's been dealing with some wide receiver issues and similar ones to the Saints have been dealing with now as the Buccaneers. Like I don't know. I don't know if you call this karma or what you call this, but they basically dealt with the exact same issues that the Saints did in their last game against the Baltimore Ravens. I guess Mike Evans, he didn't get ear-holed and concussed uh, in that game like Chris Olave did, and then uh, so I don't know if you call this karma for the Bucks or what, but they lost Mike Evans due to a hamstring, which he was already kind of dealing with that in the game against the Saints, which caused him to not put up any big numbers. But on like some deep deep ball into the end zone, it looked like that hamstring has just completely popped on him, and saying now that he won't be back until week 11 after the bye week. And then this is like almost exactly what happened to the Saints and losing Rashid Shaheed for the season. So they are losing Chris Godwin for the season, just like they lost Rashid Shaheed for the season. And it was at the end of the game in a blowout, and he got hurt and dislocated his foot, and it spun all the way around, and probably caused ligament damage. And now Chris Godwin is done for the season, just like Rashid Shaheed, who he was in the game still at the last drive, or last gasp of trying to come back from a 50 burger and ended up tearing his meniscus. So this is oddly similar, and I don't know. I don't know if you would call that karma for the Bucks or what, but man, so the Bucks are down bad. They lost to the Ravens, the Falcons. They lost. So I really hate this, honestly. So with the Bucks having all the injuries and the Falcons lost, and now they play each other this weekend, it just kind of slightly cracks open the door or opens the window for the Saints to possibly get back in the race for the NFC South, because now the Bucks, besides on the offensive line side, they're dealing with a lot of similar injuries that the Saints are. So be interesting and nice to see whether they can overcome that. And hopefully they can't. You know, you gotta have a lot of hate towards your division opponents. And I'm definitely don't want to see any injuries really, but definitely don't feel bad for them or nothing like that. So that's the Bucks who are just dealing with the same type of issues the Saints are on wide receiver. Both starting wide receiver 1 and 2 are done for a while. And then trades. So the Saints are out here signing Marquez Valdez Scantling, and we got the Kansas City Chiefs trading for DeAndre Hopkins. I think they traded a 5th-round pick that can become a conditional 5th-round pick that can become a 4th-round pick. So the Tennessee Titans just basically given the Chiefs a ring, and basically giving them a ring fitter, fitting them up for their 3rd Super Bowl in a row here, giving them a great wide receiver, a fringe Hall of Famer in DeAndre Hopkins, a player that the Saints definitely could have used, but it doesn't matter now. And then just hearing some rumblings about Cooper Kupp also. It seems like they're trying to do a fire sale for the Rams as well. And I wouldn't want Cooper Kupp personally. Older, an aging, injury-prone wide receiver. The Saints don't need any more of that, any more of players like that, especially if you have to give up any draft capital, which the Saints need to be acquiring draft capital and picks, not giving it away for what we just stated, an aging, injury-prone wide receiver. Like I'm good. If they want to give away Puka Nakua, maybe I'll reconsider, and then we can get his brother out of here. But man, a lot going on in the NFL, and it's be surprising coming up with this game against the Chargers. It's a evening game. It's a 3:05 evening game, so at least we'll get to watch the early games. And I guess right now, if you just look at the standings for the playoff tournament, the Falcons are in the playoffs, but the Buccaneers aren't. So I guess we'd probably be cheering for the Falcons to lose anyways. But yeah, that would benefit the Saints. Maybe them both tying. Tying would be fun as well. But we remember last couple of years back when the Carolina Panthers won the NFC South off of a tie. They were 7-8-1. So maybe we don't want to tie, and just all out losses is the best thing for the Saints in this benefit. But it would have been nice if the Bucks and the Falcons just continued to go on a run, and we could just completely ignore this season as to whether the Saints are going to make the playoffs. But it's the window and the door is cracked a little bit open now. But anyways, I think that's about all I have for you. So who dat? And can I get a check, please?